Have you ever wondered why some women don't just leave an impression, but carve their presence into a man's very soul? Why her absence echoes louder than most people's presence ever did? This isn't about beauty, charm, or even wit. This is about something older, darker, and far more potent. A kind of woman who doesn't seduce the body, but seduces the spirit. The kind of woman whose energy doesn't fade with time, but instead expands in memory, haunting a man's deepest longing. She is not loud. She doesn't chase. She doesn't perform. What she does is far more disarming. She mirrors. She embodies. She reveals. She holds up to a man the reflection of his own potential, his greatness, his voids, his unintegrated shadows. She awakens him, not through force, but through presence. A presence so rooted in the depth of her own being, it makes anything shallow feel like starvation. And once he's seen himself through her eyes, he can never go back to not knowing. This woman, the unforgettable one, is not born, she is forged. Through pain, through self-confrontation, through the long nights of the soul when no one claps and no one sees. She has stood naked in the mirror of her psyche, faced the unmet wounds of her childhood. The hunger for validation, the shame, the fear, the rage, and she did not flinch. She integrated it. She alchemized it. This is what William James might call the divided self made whole. The woman who has reclaimed her scattered fragments and become sovereign in her own soul. She is not the innocent maiden begging for love, nor the bitter cynic armored in sarcasm. She is the mystic, the embodiment of paradox, soft yet strong, vulnerable yet terrifying, still yet untamed. When a man meets her, it isn't her looks that stagger him. It's her depth, her refusal to be defined, her command of silence, her stillness that feels like standing at the edge of a great canyon, where everything echoes and nothing hides. She does not chase approval because she is not hungry. She is full. She is fed from within. And when she looks at him, not to complete her, but to witness him, he feels, for the first time, seen in a way that mothers couldn't manage and lovers never dared. And that seeing undoes him. She doesn't manipulate. That would be too crude, too surface. She evokes. She brings to life. She leaves behind a trail, not of promises, but of awakenings. And for a man not ready to meet himself, she is a storm he will call dangerous. But for the man who is ready, she is the key to a door he didn't know existed. He will call her unforgettable, not because of what she gave him, but because of what she unlocked in him. She doesn't offer comfort in the conventional sense. She offers truth. She is the flame that burns away pretense. And that kind of fire doesn't warm, it scorches. But only what is false, only what no longer serves. Most men have been trained to see women through the lens of ego, the conquest, the validation, the mother substitute, the reward for their labor. But this woman slips through all of that like smoke through fingers. She cannot be owned, solved, or consumed. She exists beyond objectification, not because she resists it, but because she transcends it. You may know her, or maybe you are her, or feel her rising inside you, quiet and volcanic. You don't try to impress. You no longer offer pieces of yourself for scraps of affection. You walk away, not as a punishment, but because your peace costs more than someone else's potential. And if he cannot meet you in presence, in reverence, in truth, you let him go, even if your heart screams. This is spiritual seduction, not as artifice, not as tactic, but as essence. She doesn't seduce through performance. She seduces because she is wholly herself. A woman who has met her own shadow becomes magnetic, not because she is perfect, but because she is real. And in a world addicted to illusions, reality is the most potent aphrodisiac. The kind of man who never recovers from her is not the weak one, nor the shallow one. He is the one who tasted, even briefly, the possibility of a union that transcends transaction. A meeting of soul to soul, ego to ego stripped down. He is not haunted by her body, but by the way her presence forced him to confront his own numbness. The way she challenged him, not with criticism, but with clarity. For many, this encounter will come only once. A flash, a collision, a mirror they'll spend the rest of their lives trying to reassemble. Not because she took something, but because she gave him back to himself. And he wasn't ready to hold it. You see, the feminine at her highest expression is not submissive or dominant. She is initiatory. She draws out. She dissolves masks. She raises the dead parts of a man's psyche and whispers, "This is who you really are." And that kind of knowing, that soul-deep awakening, can never be undone. There is no roadmap for handling a woman like this. No manual passed down from father to son. No locker room tale or motivational podcast that prepares a man for what it feels like to be cracked open, not by a demand, but by a gaze. Not by a lecture, but by the still, unshakable presence of a woman who knows herself. She doesn't ask for love like a beggar. She stands as love in its rawest, most unadorned form. And in doing so, she creates a field, a gravitational pull that makes masks feel unbearable. She doesn't strip a man with her hands. She strips him with her stillness, her refusal to entertain anything that is not rooted in truth. Her intimacy doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts in the psyche. For the man who has lived his life through projection, always chasing, always conquering, she becomes his reckoning. Because she does not allow herself to be turned into a fantasy. She disrupts the illusion. She forces him to see her, not as an extension of his ego, not as a prize, but as a sovereign, breathing universe. William James spoke of the divided self, the internal fracture between the persona and the soul. She represents the healing of that fracture, but only for those willing to meet her with integrity. She is not the answer to a man's emptiness. She is the question that cracks it wide open. She is not a mother to soothe his fears, nor a muse to inspire his art. She is a mirror, and to meet her is to see oneself, naked, unprepared, unvarnished. This is why men never forget her, because forgetting her would require forgetting themselves, and that is a task the soul refuses. Even when the ego tries to bury it under new bodies, louder laughs, and shallow achievements, the echo of her still rings like a bell in the caverns of his being. And yet she never clings, never begs, never tries to make him stay, because she understands it is not her job to be chosen. It is her responsibility to remain true. She does not barter for belonging. She belongs to herself, and any man who dares to walk beside her must do the same. Otherwise, he becomes just another ghost in her story, one of many who came close to the flame, but couldn't stand the heat of their own awakening. To possess a woman like this, a man would have to relinquish possession itself. He would have to step off the pedestal of domination and into the sacred ground of mutual becoming. That is a terrifying thing, for the one who has built his identity on control, certainty, and image. She is none of those things. She is chaos in its most divine order. She is unpredictable because she lives not from scripts, but from instinct, not from reaction, but from embodiment. And embodiment is the rarest form of power. It is not loud, but it is unignorable. When she walks into a room, the energy shifts, not because she seeks attention, but because she has no leaks. Her attention is her own. Her energy is gathered. She is not trying to be anything. She is. That kind of clarity, intoxicates the spiritually starved. She is not above longing, but she has transmuted need into choice. She no longer asks, "Am I enough?" because she has seen the answer in her own survival. In every heartbreak she alchemized, in every silence she sat through, in every lie she transmuted into wisdom. She is no longer seeking the crown of being desired. She crowns herself. He remembers her not for what she said, but for how she listened, not with pity, but with presence. She didn't offer empty comfort. She held space, a sacred void in which his walls fell without being pushed. And that undoing, that rare holy unraveling, became the most honest moment of his life. He will meet other women after her. They may be kinder, more agreeable, less complex, but he will feel the difference like a man feels the difference between water and wine. One quenches, the other alters. She altered him, not by changing him, but by revealing him. And revelation is irreversible. You might be wondering, what is the secret to this kind of power? It is not found in a book or a course or a seductive glance. It is found in wholeness, in the deep, inner marriage between your light and your shadow, between the part of you that aches to be held and the part that learned to stand alone. When those two meet, when the war inside you ends, you stop reaching and start radiating. A woman who has done that work becomes unforgettable, not because she is perfect, but because she is real in a world built on performance. And realness seduces the soul. And because she is real, she is dangerous. Not in the way that wounds, but in the way that exposes. The way truth burns through illusion. The way light makes shadows flee. She doesn't play the game because she sees through it. The chase, the power play, the emotional withholding, it bores her. It is too small for her spirit, too tame for a woman who has tasted her own fire. What makes her unforgettable is not just what she brings, but what she awakens in those who dare to get close. She is the rite of passage, the final trial before a man either rises into his true masculinity or retreats into the shell of performative dominance. She's the one who says, without words, "I will not carry your wounds, but I will witness them. I will not fix you, but I will mirror you. If you want a mother, look elsewhere. If you want a mirror, stand still." And how many can withstand that mirror? How many can gaze into her clarity and not flinch? To stand before her is to stand before everything you've denied, disowned, suppressed. She will not do the work for you, but her very presence will demand it. She is not demanding. She is demanded by the soul. And that is a far more unyielding force. She is not high maintenance. She is high frequency. And frequencies can only be matched, not managed. She will not lower hers to be palatable. She does not need to be palatable. She is not food. She is flame. You do not consume her. You rise to meet her. Some men will try to dim her, not out of malice, but out of fear. Her radiance reminds them of what they've buried. Her joy highlights their numbness. Her sovereignty mocks their dependency. She threatens every ego built on shallow conquest and external worth. And so, they will shrink from her, even as they ache for her. But for the man ready to evolve, truly evolve, she is salvation, not as savior, but as initiation. She does not rescue, she resurrects. She does not coddle, she calls forth. She holds the door open to the temple of depth, and only the brave step through. She is not waiting to be chosen. She has already chosen herself. She is the storm and the sanctuary, the very contradiction that makes her unforgettable. For she can bring a man to his knees with her softness, just as quickly as she can hold her silence like a blade. She is not cruel, but she is precise. She does not punish, but she responds. And when you violate her peace, she does not scream, she vanishes. That is the power of a woman who no longer needs closure to move on. What William James called the mystical experience, the union with something greater than the self she embodies, not because she seeks transcendence, but because she has made a home in her own skin. She does not ascend away from the world. She descends into it fully, into her body, her truth, her rage, her longing, her ecstasy. She walks hand in hand with the divine because she has befriended her own mortality. This kind of woman seduces through being, not doing. She doesn't compete. She doesn't compare. She creates. She creates space, emotion, archetype. She creates a version of reality that expands the consciousness of everyone around her. Not through force, but through frequency. And you feel it when you're near her. Time slows. The air thickens. You speak more carefully. You listen more deeply. You remember something you didn't know you had forgotten. Men may leave her, or she may leave them, but they do not forget. Because she is not an experience. She is a threshold. The place where their old self ended and something ancient began. And what they touched in her was not her, but themselves in her presence. That's the deepest seduction of all, being seen by someone who isn't trying to change you, but has no tolerance for your half-truths. If he returns to her, it is never from longing alone. It is because he has risen. He has done the work. He has sat with his shame, faced his addictions, released his need to dominate or be adored. He does not return as a boy seeking comfort, but as a man bearing truth, because he knows now, this woman cannot be owned, only honored. And if she chooses to open again, it will not be because she was waiting. It will be because he is ready. And if she doesn't, he will still carry her imprint, like a scar across the soul, a mark of the moment he almost became himself. The tragedy is not in losing her. It is in not rising to meet her, in shrinking in her presence instead of expanding, in choosing safety over sovereignty, in mistaking her intensity for chaos, when in truth, it was the clearest form of order he had ever known. For the woman men never recover from is not memorable because she gave them what they wanted. She is unforgettable because she revealed what they needed and what they feared. She is not about potential. She is about presence. And presence is the most radical act of power in a world obsessed with distraction. She is there, fully. When she listens, it is with her entire body. When she touches, it is with ancient memory. When she loves, it is without armor, but never without boundaries. This is why she cannot be kept in a cage, not of promises, not of status, not of marriage. She doesn't belong to institutions. She belongs to truth. And that truth evolves. She changes, not out of instability, but because she is becoming, always becoming. And to love her is to understand that you cannot hold her in place. You can only hold her in respect. The men who never recover are not weak. They are awakened, sometimes tragically, sometimes beautifully, but always irrevocably. Because the woman who has faced her darkness, who has danced with her wounds and emerged with light in her hands, she is the sacred other, the living embodiment of anima, the feminine soul that Carl Jung said lives in every man's unconscious, waiting to be integrated. And when he meets her in the flesh, he's not just drawn to her, he is drawn to himself through her. She is the internal compass made external, the dream made real. But unlike dreams, she is not made to be controlled. She is made to awaken. And once awakened, a man can no longer sleep through his life. He may try to replace her with someone softer, easier, safer, but he will find no rest there, because the ache she leaves behind is not for her body, but for the version of himself that only lived in her presence. That version haunts him, because it is the man he was born to be. And so he walks through the rest of his life with that echo inside him, a reminder not of a woman lost, but of a truth revealed, a voice that says, you were more in her presence, more awake, more honest, more alive. And no matter how far he runs, that memory isn't chained to her. It's chained to the part of him that she touched, the part that can no longer go back to sleep. This woman doesn't become unforgettable because she tried to be. She becomes unforgettable because she refused to be anyone else. In a world where women are groomed to self-abandon for approval, she stood her ground. She chose solitude over shallow connection, depth over desirability, integrity over attention. And for that, she doesn't become a chapter, she becomes the axis. She didn't need to be chosen because she was no longer waiting to be validated by someone else's readiness. She embodied the marriage she once searched for in others. Her inner masculine no longer in exile, her feminine no longer grasping. Together, they moved as one, steady, clear, sovereign. She is the kind of woman who lives in myth because she is myth. She walks through fire without flinching, not because she doesn't feel the heat, but because she knows the flames can only burn what's no longer real. And so she sheds, again and again, old identities, old stories, old ties, until only the essence remains. And when she looks at you, it is not with hunger, but with knowing, not with hope, but with discernment. She has nothing to prove, nothing to perform. If you are here, she sees you. If you leave, she blesses you. If you return, she tests you, not out of bitterness, but out of reverence for what she carries. Because a woman like this does not let you in easily. Her love is not a doorway, it is a temple. You don't just enter, you cleanse yourself before crossing the threshold. You leave your ego at the gate. You walk in barefoot, with bare soul. And if you are allowed to stay, it is not because you passed a test. It is because you remembered who you are and chose to stay that way. This is the kind of woman men never recover from. Because once you've met a woman who holds the universe in her silence, who walks with the wisdom of every woman before her, who stands unmoved in the face of fear, you can never again love in half measures. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and most importantly, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.